All right, I think I'm back. So, in case I did this wrong, this is your local idiot again. And I had a tiny little thought. I decided to share it with you. Sorry about that. This is your chance to run. Watch Brady Bunch or something instead. Anyway, I just dropped my wife off at Moline Airport in Moline, Illinois, in the Quad Cities. And I'm heading back home to Clinton, Iowa. She's taking a business trip to Colorado, a long overdue promotion she should have gotten years ago. But we're both pretty excited. It's a great opportunity for her to kind of stretch her wings a little bit. She has 2 master's degrees. One is an MBA, just like mine. MBA, mine's in project management, hers is in basically management. But her other master's degree is in something that only our school offered at the time. I don't know if more schools do now, but that was at University of Arkansas, Grantham. And it's called a master's degree of performance improvement. So her job that she just got promoted to is it's a big company, and it's one of a few people at her job that are higher level managers that are assigned to properties around the country that are struggling, that are underperforming. And it's my wife's job, along with the other people that do what she does. There's only like 3 of them total in the company, and it's a nationwide company. That basically that's what they do. They go in and they make an assessment of what's happening, what's working, what's not working, and they report to the company what needs to be done, and then the company will let them know if they would like her or one of the other people to make those changes, to make the property profitable again. And so she's not only a really experienced manager in the rental, field, but she's got I remember when she was taking those classes, and we read about it together a lot and stuff. When she was doing her homework and things like that, we discussed a lot of it and stuff. And to me it was fascinating. And I used to do something like that, a little bit like that, in that when I originally got away from the rental property business, I went into consulting, and my focus was teaching new companies and companies with struggling maintenance programs how to build an effective maintenance team, and teaching them the kinds of things that are legitimately a maintenance issue and the things that are a waste of their money as a maintenance issue, and so that what to farm out, kind of a thing. And it's I was taught by an older guy that really knew his stuff, and as a maintenance supervisor, and it was always shocking to me to find out how many companies either didn't have an actual maintenance team or program, where that they just sort of hired some guys that could fix some stuff and said, yeah, good luck, which always blew my mind. That professionals, that would otherwise, approach their job pretty on point, but then where the maintenance department was concerned, they were just like, I don't know anything about that, and couldn't be that hard, I've seen the morons that do that, and then they're like, that's it. Well, in reality, of course, it's a lot to do, if you're going to do it properly. And managers like my wife are left to do a whole bunch of stuff that the maintenance supervisor actually should be doing. And some maintenance supervisors that I've worked with, are hardcore proud that they don't ever farm anything out, which is just ridiculous. Because your job as a maintenance team is to maintain stuff. Now, there's plenty of times when there's projects to refurbish older properties or things like that. And the maintenance team should not be doing those things, because that's not how the maintenance team, it's not what they're made for. Otherwise, they wouldn't be called a maintenance team. Like, I used to take on one of my first big maintenance jobs as a supervisor, as I would take on brand new properties that were just built by my company, and then that part of the company would hand them off to the part of the company I would work for, which was the property management. And we went through with all the problems of brand new places, mistakes that were made and and got people to come back and work on them. Same thing with all the appliances. There was always a 1-year warranty on every appliance. And so it was a master class for me and any of the other maintenance people when the GE guys would show up to work on any of these malfunctioning but new appliances. And so I had a ton of experience, just right place, right time. And so I started doing that. And but I knew nothing about business. I knew my end of that particular business, and so I realized right away that the books, which is always the dirtiest word to any kind of new small business owner, and all the regs, taxes, accounting, all those kinds of things, even HR stuff, having to know all the hiring laws, the employment laws and what you could or couldn't do. I was coming from the military in my leadership training, and military is so different than civilian life. It took me seriously 20 years to learn how to talk to people. It was no longer my way or the highway kind of a thing. It is my way or the highway, but you can't make it feel that way to employees in the civilian world. You have to, and it does make sense that you would do this anyway, but you would do it with more empathy sounding, is that you would give them, you'd notice a problem and then you talk to them. You say, hey, there's this you're doing great in these areas, but this thing right here is not working. Let me take some time with you to show you the proper way to do this, and then once I'm confident you have this down, we want to see that from now on. And then like anybody, there's a variety of reasons why that malfunction is happening. Sometimes they just didn't know any better, and that's legit. Nobody knows everything, and that's the whole point of having somebody in my position that's got a lot more experience, so that we can teach them. Because at every stage of my employment, I didn't know everything, and one of the differences between a guy in my stage of my working life and somebody newer, even myself 20 years ago, I didn't know everything then, I don't know everything now. The difference is now, I'm not afraid of not knowing everything. I don't feel bad about not knowing everything. I'm very, very interested genuinely to know everything, and I would never hold it over somebody's head like it was something they should know, because nobody's perfect. Not one person. Nobody's omnipotent, and so if I happen to know something, lucky me and lucky them, I'll teach them, and I'm not a jerk about it, but at one time, when I'd run into those uncommon, and they are uncommon, people that basically thought that they would tell me how things are going to go. That's dumb. And this my phone stand's not working good. And then I would explain to them that they are horribly mistaken. That it's going to go. I'm open to suggestions, and any suggestions that make sense, awesome. Like I say, I don't know everything. And there's this thing called flash of genius. It means that anybody can come up with a great idea, something they've been exposed to that I haven't been exposed to, or something that they even created in their own mind or whatever. Fine. But the idea is, once we're past that, and it's just they don't like certain things, they want to do it a certain way, then I tell people the things that were told me forever and ever and ever, is that first learn it my way, get good at it, and then if you want to improve it, that's fine. You don't have to do it exactly my way after that. Know how to do it properly, and part of that is efficiently, right? And with the right amount of time and all that stuff that it would take, and not wasting time or materials, that kind of stuff, and also treating people well, customers, fellow employees, or whatever. Once you master that, then if you want to change something up and it doesn't hurt any of those parameters, fine, awesome. But once in a while you'd run into somebody that's like, no. And that's what I call a soft skill, okay? I think there's a lot of definitions of what soft skills are. But what my soft skills are stuff from the very lowest of the totem pole is showing up in the morning. That's a soft skill. And, getting up, taking a shower, not stinking when you're at work, that kind of stuff. Really basic stuff. That's one of the things that the military was good for, was they taught everybody, and I mean everybody, the soft skills. Once you've spent 4 years in the military, you have zero excuse for not having your soft skills down. At that point, you're just a scumbag if you don't. And I've met a few of them. I met a few of them when I was in the military, and I've met a bunch more since I've been out. And it was easy as pie to explain to them, because they ought to know, and what the issue is and what I expect and all that kind of stuff, and why. Not that it's just because I feel like it. It's because it's a professional organization. Their position is a professional position. The reason it's important is because they're a representative of the people that own the joint, and the people that own the place can't be everywhere at once, so they hire a person like me to train a bunch of new people. Then we literally can start putting people everywhere at once that are all professional representatives of the company. So anyway, my wife just took a trip to Colorado to do this she's like 2 weeks of training, to go over what her position has been, what the next position above her is, and then the next week is the brand new position, which is equal to a regional manager, because unfortunately sometimes they have to correct regional managers, so they have to be equal to them in stature, and then also how to do these things or whatever. I'm totally stoked for her, because I think this is going to be something that she's an intuitive person. She's an intelligent person, smartest person I've ever met, but with still a soul. I've met a whole bunch of people that are ridiculously smart, but at the same time, I question whether some stuff like they could tie their shoes on their own, that kind of thing. Luckily, she's one of those people that is highly intelligent, but is still socially there. She's not autistic and all that kind of stuff. And so she's just one of those rare people that's kind of good at everything. I will say this: she's not very good at taking shit. I've noticed since 1985, and the thing I've teased her about the most since I've known her is that she walks around with a chip on her shoulder, and it really angers her, and I think it's probably because it maybe made her mom mad too, but that somebody would treat her differently, or almost she's less than or whatever because she's a woman. My parents lived in a time, my dad was born in 1938. They lived through a time, and her parents too, where she and I are the same age, where that women were, had a place in society. Men had a different place in society, and it was like division of labor. The woman stayed home, had the kids, fed the kids, kept the house, that kind of stuff. The man went out for work, and often worked a dangerous job, very often. and had to have different skill sets, working with the public, working with a boss that you don't necessarily agree with all the time, but at the same time having to do what they say. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, almost my entire childhood, of course, but she was like 7 years younger than my dad, and my dad died at 50 years old. And so when my dad died of a heart attack, I still had a younger brother who was 12 and a sister who both lived at home. They were too young to move out yet, and I had moved out just recently, and yeah, that was tough, on that whole group. Me too, but mine was different than theirs. They were in this situation, and my mom was. There's lots of ways to deal with stuff. My mom and dad were both very passionate people in every way, shape, or form. There was a lot of arguing in between them, lots of it. But at the same time, they also loved each other very much, and it was really obvious. And so it was almost like you'd hear about like an Italian family or something, which we weren't on either side. But boy, I'll tell you, they were hot and cold, hot and cold, hot and cold. And when my dad died, she approached that in the exact same way she lived with him, which was she lost her shit, lost her mind for a while. And my sister and brother had a real difficult time. They were sort of free range for a little bit there. And, I made changes. I'd planned on things for decades, and I shouldn't say decades. I had planned on things for at least a decade, and I was only 19 at the time. But I thought I could take a hiatus from that, like hit pause, and then go back to it, and it just didn't work that way. So life, there's an old joke: if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. My dad, my dad asked me what my plans were, and I told him what my plans were, and he said, well, I did this and I did this. What if you did some kind of a hybrid thing, a little bit more like I did, and then you basically go into the National Guard first, and then go to the regular Army, all that kind of stuff. And so I said, fine, because he did that for reserve first, and then he went to the full-time Navy. And so I said, fine, no problem. His thing in the end was he didn't want to let me go. Just period. He couldn't. I don't know if he didn't think I was ready or what, but I got the vibe that it was the. He was really, really, really fighting the urge or whatever to let me go, and did not want to see me progress out of the house. And I don't know why. I could take that a lot of ways, but I'm just going to assume, because we never really spoke about it. And I asked him a few times, even straight out, like, do you think I'm, not capable or what? And he goes, he said the same thing. He said that the military, it's not a question of whether you're capable or not. The military will take care of you like a second set of parents, sort of, while you're growing up. For your last little stage of growing up. That's not it. And so that's why I think it was possible, it was legit, that his thing was he just didn't want me to leave yet, because he just didn't want to. And it wouldn't have been an empty nest type of thing, but he just couldn't bring himself around to it. Now I've never had kids, so I've got friends that have kids that probably can understand this, or maybe it's a like a almost uniquely him thing. I don't know. But so when my wife gets back after 2 or 3 weeks, she's got 2 weeks, and then I think she's got another week doing something else. Maybe back here, like in our local area. another week of training for something. And then we'll get sent off to the first property that is on the list of properties that are underperforming. And I've heard rumors, like from her, that she doesn't know, but she had heard that it was possible it could be in Baton Rouge, which I would love because I've lived down in New Orleans, and so Baton Rouge isn't that far away, and it's a little nicer actually than New Orleans in some ways. And it's also possible we'll get sent to Minneapolis. So not my first love by any means, because one of my things about going to Baton Rouge would be that the winters would be nicer, but hard to imagine as it is. Minneapolis would be worse than where I live winter-wise now, because where I live winter-wise is kind of sucky, and Minneapolis would be suckier, so that way. But I mean, it was okay enough for Prince, so I could make it work. But anyway, as we're doing that kind of stuff, her thing, which will still be fascinating to me. I mean, living vicariously through her, you know, hearing about her day every day and all that kind of stuff. That to me will be fascinating. But the business I'm working on getting into right now, I've got two businesses. One, I first started a thing called Sunshine Home Cleaners LLC, and I wanted to open that up on the West Coast, in a particular place, and then expand from there. It's limitlessly scalable. But then I found out to do it properly, I got to a place where it was a stopping point. And then to do it properly, I was going to have to I know my bachelor's degree is in marketing, but I realized that where my expertise stops is in a vital part of marketing, and I need somebody to do that. So I found a company, I shopped for companies that do this, and I found a company that does two things at the same time, and they had just stellar reviews for digital marketing, and that's everything from social marketing to, you know, just online presence, you know, and then the constant making sure that it's something that when people are looking for something that, like what I'm providing, that they can pull me up quickly, you know, like that I'll be, you know, near the top of the page kind of thing. So that's a thing. And then also, you know, the social media, making sure that it's getting posted on every type of social media, and I'll tell them, you know, what not to do, because I don't give a shit about Truth Social and stuff like that. Frankly, I don't want to work for anybody that's on those, or X. Don't give a damn about that. And also CRM, so that's customer relationship management, and so that's everything from the website, where people want to come in and look at the website to see what our story is, because story is really important. People don't want to just hire somebody they don't know. They don't like the idea of having people they don't know in their house. So on the website, part of customer relationship is you introduce yourself to them. You tell them about yourself. You tell them about some of your experiences. You tell them about what made you want to do this business now. And at some point they can say, yeah, that sounds legit. I actually kind of dig that, you know, or they don't, or they're saying they sound harmless, you know, whatever. And eventually that will translate to like reviews, you know, customer reviews on the website and things too. So that's a big part of customer relationship. The other half of the CRM is scheduling. So when a customer goes to the website and they see all the stuff, and then they decide, they see the pricing and everything else, and how it's structured, you know, what the options are, then they can choose to book an appointment. Okay. So this company does all the digital marketing, and they do a good job of it, and they do the CRM, which means that I don't have to have a person on the phone for them to call, and then this person has to be able to answer the phone correctly every time, no grumpiness, you know, all that kind of stuff on a bad day or whatever, and schedule an appointment. The CRM program does it itself. They say, well, I'd like to have Wednesday at 10 o'clock, and if it's available, they can just click it, and, you know, and it's scheduled, and then we're notified about it. Every single one of my teams would have their teams of 3, and they'd have a tablet, the lead person would, and basically somebody at the office, and there's not going to be a real actual office, like a brick and mortar office. It's going to be remote, meaning that somebody is going to be a regional manager for team managers, and the team managers will have several teams underneath them, and the lead person on each team will basically interface with the team managers. So my guess is when things are being scheduled, it'll come in through like a team manager. The team manager will assign work to teams, and that way they can make sure everybody's getting enough work, and even sometimes tailor certain kinds of jobs to certain teams, that are better at certain things than others. And personnel is always an issue. Teams always need to have 3 people to go into a person's home, for me. And if they're having a personnel issue, which means they have 2 or something, we haven't hired that new person yet. There are things that we can send the 2-person team, like on bigger jobs, we can send them with a 3-person team. Then we've got enough people. But we want it to be, there's always a minimum of 3, and there's reasons for that. So, but anyway, that's one business. But I had to wait, because to do that properly, to get that off the ground, I mean, I've got all the business licenses and a bunch of stuff built, a logo for it, signage and all that kind of stuff. Everything's built, ready to go, except for that team, that company. They cost $500 to $800 a month. They're not cheap. There's a saying, good things aren't cheap and cheap things aren't good. And so I have to have an income, because I'm not getting a small business loan. I know better. That's a foolish idea. So I've got to have an income that pays for that business to get off the ground. And once it gets off the ground, there will be a point where it pays for itself, of course. But it's like priming a pump. You have to get it going and then keep it going, And once it gets going and it starts to crank, and the more it's doing that, the more I'll be able to step back. As I train people for the different positions and stuff like that, then it'll be a self-sustaining business, which is awesome. So the income that I'm going to have, I attempted on my business trip when I was in Oregon, I attempted to find an income out there, find a job that was something I could blend both with. And I didn't find anything, because I didn't have an address there other than like a post office box. And everybody wanted an Oregon driver's license. So I couldn't. Oregon said, nope, you got to have an apartment or something like that. And having an RV spot was not good enough for them. So, and I wasn't about to. I had converted my van so I could be there temporarily to start this thing. And going to the point of actually getting an apartment was, 1, not something I was interested in, and 2, to get the business rolling, I had to have an income. Well, to get an apartment, I'd have to have an income too. So that didn't make sense. So I was out there long enough to figure out that, okay, I have to have an income, and an income's not going to happen here at this time. So I went back to back to Iowa, and I was about 3 weeks, and so I didn't want to stay out there for no reason and keep banging my head against a wall. So I came back. Now, fast forward, I don't know, been a month or something like that, month or 2 now, and Karen's job promotion thing became more solidified, and so now I'm like, okay, so what I've got to do is not just have a job. I have to have something where that I can travel with her. She's going to be at these places for 4 or 5 months at a time, and then we're going to go to another place, which could be across the country. So I needed something that I could bring with me. It's remote. I can travel if I need to locations and stuff like that, where that I could consult with companies that either need to fix a badly running maintenance program, because it's more common than people realize, or people that are brand new to property investing, like they inherited a property or who knows what, or a bank that had to take over a property or whatever, and the property is in trouble. oftentimes they need somebody to come in and build a comprehensive maintenance program for that property, and then even hire the people and then train them, and teach the managers what their roles are, because it is very common for property managers, even with quite a bit of experience, not to know or to have the wrong ideas, which is, it's unfortunate for them because they're getting beat to death. They're like a one-legged guy in a butt-kicking contest when their property's maintenance supervisor isn't doing all they're supposed to do. Then those tasks still must be done, and then they fall on the property manager, who already has a lot to do. So they're spreading themselves too thin, and that's one of the things that makes a property perform badly. The company my wife is with, she was a property manager, and she has some difficulties with her maintenance team that she inherited when she got hired. And I've told her many times that, as I'm listening to her tell me about her day and about things she's doing and things like that, and I'm like, I've been, invariably always been just shaking my head like, you are getting rooked here, they're messing you up. And I've offered to write stuff out and things. I've offered to even pitch her boss's boss, kind of a thing, about how they run their maintenance department in the entire big company. I mean, for instance, in their company, it's a really nice big company, but they're doing kind of what's typical about the maintenance, where that they understand the management, they don't understand the maintenance, and the maintenance is just sort of left out there for the property manager to wing it, and it's very, very inefficient. With a company that size, there should be a person in the management, like there's just one of them, that's a maintenance director for the entire company. Certain standards, when maintenance supervisors, that's per property, get hired, or they're going to get hired, that maintenance director's job is to make sure they get the training before it's time to switch them up, so that they're ready, for that job. So anyway, I've offered all that kind of stuff, and it's still, unfortunately, because of the nepotism thing, and it would be delicate for my wife to work there, and I'd be telling her boss and her boss's boss and maybe her boss's boss's boss, things that they're doing wrong, and which would not be easy on her. We all know where bad things flow from. It's usually uphill, and so yeah, that was never going to work. So just because of that, so she finally got out of that position, which she was just swimming in tar, with that particular job. Now she can actually start having a hand in fixing that stuff herself, and more power to her, because she had her hands full. So anyway, that's the business that I'm working on to fund the first business. And I've told a couple of people that I know this. I'm going to change the world, and that's the whole point of this. The first business, I know the same thing everybody else knows about cleaning. Other than that, I've worked in hotels and I've worked in rental properties, and I've hired lots and lots and lots of cleaning companies, and I've learned over time that it's much better to hire companies than to create your own cleaning department. It always works better. And so I've seen the way good quality cleaning companies work, the things they do, and the levels that they hold themselves to, and things like that. So I have the ability to kind of mimic that in my own company, right? And also how to find people that are also kind of naturals, right? But cleaning is a soft skill, kind of like I tell everybody that, when you get out of the military, you're a natural born cleaner now. Because while you're in the military, it doesn't matter if you're a helicopter pilot or an infantryman or, you know, an IT person or whatever, the very first thing you learn in the military is how to clean. And because you're not allowed to have messy stuff. You're not allowed to have a wrinkled blanket on your bunk. Not even an officer is allowed that. And officers don't have privates fixing their stuff like that. They have to fix their own stuff. So the very first thing you learn how to do is be an adult. You know, be a grown up. Take care of your shit. And so it's one of the reasons I chose cleaning, because it's something that most everybody knows how to do. And since most everybody knows how to do it, if I run into somebody that doesn't know how to do it, anybody that works for me pretty much will be able to train them. And if we find out within 30 days or so that they're not trainable, out the door. You know, they'll be hired on a probationary basis, so they know if they don't work out for whatever reason, they're done, you know. And there'll also be all the regular stuff like a book that's their policies and practices and stuff like that, and kind of a rule book, you know, that says if you don't put forth the effort, and it's not heroic effort, but if you don't put forth the effort that's expected and that's common, then you won't have a job. So even if you're there a year and all of a sudden you just say, fuck it, I'm checking out, I don't care anymore, not a problem. You'll get 3 chances, most likely. You know, the first chance will be, hey, we worked on this at one time and you're not doing that now. And they get some retraining. And then if it happens again, or something similar happens again, you say, hey, this is kind of a strike 2 now, you know. And so we're going to work on this again, and I'm going to pay extra attention to you while I'm working with you, or whoever's working with you, and extra attention to the follow-up. Okay, so you're going to be under scrutiny for after the second time. And if it happens again, or if we determine that you've checked out, or you don't care, or you must have a difficult moonlighting job or whatever, you're done. And there won't be any secrets about it. Everybody will know, you know. And it's important. It's not a public execution, but it is important for everybody to know there are limits to what you're allowed to do, you know. I mean, I've been under those kind of limits my whole life, my whole working life, because, you know, I've worked at places that have accountability, you know, personal accountability. You know, it's got to be profitable. You know, a business that takes care of people and makes customers happy, and for whatever reason, you know, or takes recommendations or suggestions that get up to the people that make those decisions, like me. If those things aren't happening, then my business can't grow. In fact, my business can die that way. And, you know, I can't have somebody out there, you know, a crazy person with a gun, you know what I mean, representing my business that way. So, you know, I've learned a long time ago, you know, you got to make a decision, be decisive. If somebody's not working, they're probably just in the wrong spot. You know, nothing against them, but they need to be doing something else, you know. And one of the things they need not to do is to destroy something I've worked really hard at building. So my consulting business would basically be, they'd have one product, okay, and that is giving an assessment, you know, an audit, doing an audit of a company and what's going on, what the you know, what the people that are hiring me see as their problem, and then go in and just look at the size of the business, you know, how many apartments they have or houses they manage or whatever, and there's a formula, you know, to how many maintenance guys versus how many apartments or square footage you have or whatever, and if that's not right, that's an area that could be improved. If there's too many, that's also an area that can be improved, because, you know, the company's wasting money at that point. The company might be wasting money on a management person, whether it's a property management or whether it's a regional management person. That happens more than you'd realize. That there's a person that a key person in a spot that's like kind of like clog, you know, and they're setting a bad pace for everybody. And sometimes when they are replaced, things immediately go good. Have you ever seen companies where that where you're at work and the person that's everybody's supervisor, they go on vacation or something, and then suddenly everything works great. Clearly, there's a problem with that person. I mean, that's how you test electronics. It's one of the ways, is that, okay, how's it run with this attached? How's it run with this not attached? If it runs better with it not attached, you found the problem, okay? And so that's it's a piece of the assessment. So the assessment's done for a certain amount of money, depending on the size of the property and all that. And the company then, in the assessment, I would state what I feel is right, what I feel is wrong, and what needs to be done. And so if they're on top of it and they don't want to spend a ton of money or can't spend a ton of money, they can take my recommendations, do them themselves, and solve the problems. Now, I say this: if they couldn't have already done that themselves, there's a lot of experience and technical stuff that I know, but if they couldn't have already done that themselves, it's possible that they don't have the expertise that they need. Somebody in the position that is wanting to hire me doesn't have some of the expertise they need to be able to do what I just did, or what needs to be physically done. Dumbass. And so the idea is that, if they couldn't do that, then they may end up having to hire me, or they may choose to hire me to actually do the corrections. I'm never gonna be a maintenance guy ever again. I don't have to do that. That's something I've grown past. But I can definitely show companies how to make money with that, how to get rid of so much stress and anxiety and risk. Part of what I do as a good maintenance supervisor does is tremendously mitigates risk, liability and stuff like that, in so many ways, whether it's making sure that your employees are safe, making sure that your residents, your tenants are safe, that kind of stuff, keeping you from getting sued, and so there's lots of things that company can do, and I'm doing the market research, and there's lots of room for that, lots of call for that, but there's not a ton of people doing the consulting. And there's a whole bunch of people doing consulting, but they're not a maintenance supervisor or a good one. They're basically somebody that is a handyman kind of a thing, where that they know how to fix a lot of stuff, which in reality they're what they're oftentimes trying to do is burn houses down. And I've seen my share of that. So I just got home, by the way, and okay. And so I would be the professional version of that. So now, just to give you that update, it's another long ass video, but just to give you that update and what I'm doing. So while she's at training, I'm going to be further developing the company. And so I've already written up a proper business plan. I've also, I'm never going to be looking for, I don't think I'm ever, I shouldn't say never, never's a long time, but I don't think I'm ever going to be looking for investors or anything like that, because problems can come with that too. Unless you get really, it's like having a roommate, unless you get really lucky and have the right person, that could be a problem. So, and I'm able to work with other people and stuff. There's not a question of that. I've been working with people my whole life, and I've never had a job where I was all by myself. It's always been a team effort kind of a thing, whether it was construction or on as a deckhand on towboats all over the United States, and all the various things I've done, building houses and things like that. It's always been teams. And so I'm happy being a member of a team, but I have the final say. that's one of the nice things when you're a member of a team, but you're 57 years old, and it's something that you've done your whole life. You should have the final say. Not that you would even use it all the time, but when people around you have responsibilities and you want them to have responsibilities enough to where that it would be nice that you could walk away. It would be great if they came up with kind of the same ideas that you did, that I would, and then I can trust when I'm not there, those people are on it, and that's the kind of business I want to own. For sure, that's the goal with the cleaning business. I want to work myself out of a job with the cleaning business. There's not a ton of technical stuff. It's mostly, customer service and just common sensey stuff, right? Except in that the customer service, I want to be remarkable, right? I want it to be way, way better than what is typical. And that's something that lots of people want, you know what I mean, when you're a business owner, but it's entirely doable. And it depends on a whole bunch of things, doing a whole bunch of things correctly. And you just can't be lazy, and you have to be a planner. And in the construction business that I've always done, planning is a big deal. Then, hey, Ginger Billy. Then when I did my college stuff, my bachelor's was in marketing. My master's is in business administration, but it focused on project management, which is all about planning and getting teams to work well together, And so, it all made sense to me. Simply made sense to me because, in construction and all that kind of stuff, that's all I ever did was work with project managers, and really admired the good ones because they do more than just make sure that the inventory is there, make sure that all the permits are in place. They do a lot more than that. There's so much psychology involved, and so much just not being a dick, and also, seeing into the future based on your experience from the past, right? And learning lessons and stuff like that. Well, so I think that this is going to end up working because it's right up my alley. So, anyway, if anybody has any suggestions or comments, anybody, I always see people that I watch on TikTok and stuff like that, and YouTube or whatever. I always hear them say they'll horrible negative comments come in that are pointless. It's just somebody that wants to hurt somebody. They actually will read it and then even comment about it. My thing is that anybody that ever comments some stupid shit like that to me, that's pointless and all that, I'll just block them. I won't ever pollute the page that I'm putting out with that kind of negative crap. So just beware if you say something constructive, even if it's not something to my liking, but it's constructive. Oh, I am absolutely about that. And I might even have a discussion with you about it because I'm not, it's like the political thing or whatever, I'm not so attached to anything I've got that, that I couldn't discuss it. Right. But if you frame it to where that there's actually kind of no point in me bothering to discuss it, then why would I, right? And then once you do that once, you'll never talk to me again because I'll block you, So just fair warning, I would love to hear your comments, your constructive comments. I'll give you credit on anything that I end up doing that that can end up benefiting the company or whatever. Like I say, if somebody gives me a suggestion that ends up making me money, you're going to get a part of it. That's just how it is. If you give me a suggestion that I've already got going on, or something that is a no-brainer that I was already planning on or whatever, of course, that's just you being friendly and me appreciating your input, because it comes from the heart, or whatever. But I'm not a dick, though. If you suggest something to me that actually helps me, that I wasn't thinking about, and it happens on a regular basis. I've got a buddy, my best friend besides my wife, that made a suggestion about the consulting business, and I wasn't thinking of it. And I plan on, I wrote up some plans last night about it. So yeah, I did a marketing, like a business plan that's designed to give to prospective investors or whatever. And the only reason I really did it is because I want to be able to show both styles of the business plan, and it basically to anybody that I hire, even or that I'm seeking to work for, kind of a thing, because I want them to know, I want them to be able to see my cards. I don't have anything to hide, and if I'm not for somebody or whatever, it's not because of my lack of expertise. Maybe they don't like mustaches. I don't know. I have no idea. But I'm honest every time, and sometimes I'm brutally honest. And I try not to be. I try to be tactful. But if I can't be, I won't be. It's natural for me to give what's called no bullshit assessments. And I have to tell myself and make myself be more delicate depending on who I'm talking to often. But I tell you what, if somebody was giving me an assessment, I would prefer the straightforward, no bullshit, no frills. Just tell me the truth, And if you want to cuss every other word, fine. It's my entire life around everybody that I've been around. And my wife gives as good as she gets that way, We're not real vulgar people, but we do not stand on ceremony at all. So anyway, give me a shout. Tell me what you think. Tell me what you think my odds are. Tell me what you've heard about pricing. Right. A couple of AI things have said that I should charge like around $1,500 for the assessment. But I think that assessment would vary price-wise depending on how deep I have to get. And, like a big company with lots of apartments and all this kind of stuff, I would have to get deeper, as opposed to a company that's just starting out a maintenance program where I'm just have to go through and tell them what I would do, and I wouldn't have to dig at all for that. I'm just walking around and finding out what they've got. So it's possible that $1,500 is kind of a medium of the road assessment. But I would love to hear from you guys. And if you've heard of ever somebody doing this, if you had the property yourself, and I know several people that might see this that are really good business people or have a lot of common sense that could imagine what they would pay for that. Everything's about profit and loss. Everything's about, what's it worth, because a bad maintenance program or no maintenance program essentially can cost a lot of money. It really can cost a lot of money to where it's ROI, you're not getting the return on your investment that you should, and a well-run maintenance program that's set up right and all that kind of stuff can actually make you money hand over fist. And could really actually even put you on the map. I can't tell you how many times renters have said over and over and over and over again, for the years I worked at a place that, I stay here because I don't have any, all I got to do is pay the bill. It doesn't go up crazy amounts every year and stuff. It goes up with the cost of living like 4% every year rental. And the maintenance team is always on it. I put in a work order and it's done in 24 hours every time, and things like that. That's, you know, and then they stay there, and then they tell everybody. That's how it makes you money, okay? And pretty soon the company could, if they wanted to, raise prices. When you find out the competition is sucking around you and that people are beating a path to your door, no problem. Bump it up 10%, you know, and do that, you know, every other year for 5 years or something like that. Yeah, you'll be more expensive than everybody around you, but people are willing to pay. If they can afford it, they're willing to pay. And so that's called an investment, and making the most of a return on the investment that you can, while keeping it reasonable. And reasonable is, my dad used to say, raise the price until their forehead turns purple, and then stop. That's a way to look at it anyway. All right, anyway, later, and sorry about this long-ass video. Have a great day. Bye.